Hello all, and welcome to Introduction to Aggregate Functions. For this video, we're going to dive into a more advanced topic when it comes to SQL select statements, and that is aggregate functions. I think you're going to find them very interesting and very powerful, and for the most part, pretty easy. With that, what we need to understand first is what a function is. Some of you may already know what a function is when it comes to programming, but we want to do a little bit of review around that. Then we'll go into what an aggregate function is in SQL. Finally, we'll walk through the functions that we want you to understand for this particular class. That will be count, sum, average, min, and max. All right, let's get started. So what is a function? A function is a group of code that does a specific task. So for you out there that have already gone through a programming class, basically what happens is that we take small tasks, individual tasks, tasks that have one purpose, and we put it into a procedure, a function, basically a little piece of code, and we call that code. All right. If you haven't learned it already, you're going to be doing that in a lot of your programming classes, especially in Programming 2, starting at the end of Programming 1, and then every other programming class you ever take, everything will be developed into a function and or procedure. It makes it easier to read, easier to maintain, and for the most part, easier to write. In a lot of cases, functions return a value. Based upon the actual programming language, a function always returns a value. In our case, what we're going to be doing today, it will return a value. So usually what a function does is does some tasks for you and returns the value back to wherever it was called. All right. Many functions are already pre-written for you. That's kind of the beauty of a function. You write it one time, you can reuse it over and over again. In SQL, there are several functions. We're going to review a few here, these aggregate functions, but there's actually more functions that you can use that we'll talk about a little bit in the coming weeks, but you'll probably learn more about in subsequent classes throughout the curriculum. To use them, you reference them by their names. So you need to know what the functions' names are, and you need to be able to know how you can pass data to these functions so they can actually process that data to return a value back to you. So in a sense, a function has inputs and a function has an output. The inputs are what you pass to it. The outputs are what is returned back. All right? It's not that hard. Hopefully this makes sense a little bit. If not, kind of go back and listen to what I just said once again. But for the most part, a function is just a piece of code that somebody wrote. You're going to pass some data to it. It's going to return the answer back to you. All right? So an aggregate function is just that. Once again, a function pre-written in SQL where the values of multiple rows are grouped together to form a single value of more significant meaning. So in this case here, it's going to take a bunch of rows in your result set and compute them all. So if we want to add something up or count the records or average them or figure out the min and the max, basically what we're going to be covering here today, that's what it will do. It will just return that actual number back to us. It's very powerful, and it makes our SQL that much more powerful. Basically, so once again, they're pre-written pieces of code, very powerful. We got the whole thing. Let's keep going here. So what's the first function? The first function we want to talk about is count. So you reference it as count. That's what you actually say. You're going to put that in your select statements. The SQL count function returns the number of rows in a table satisfying the criteria specified in the where clause. So for the most part, what a count does, it counts the rows based on the result sets. Why would that be interesting? Well, I don't know. Let's just go, if we think about any database, if we want to know how many sales we had at any particular time, we could go count the rows of each sale that could be represented by a store or by a customer. And that way, all we have to do is just go count the rows, and we know how many sales we had by a store. I think you would agree that could be good information for somebody. How many sales did we have today? So that's what count does. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to kind of go bounce back and forth between our PowerPoint here, if you will, and actually go out and kind of do these things, okay? So I have out here some test data and a little test database talking about sales and stores and customers, okay? It has 3 tables in it. so you understand completely how this works. I have a stores table, okay, that basically has a one-to-many relationship to its sales. And then there's a customer table that has a one-to-many relationship to its sales also. So basically what we're saying is a store can have many sales, okay, and a customer can have many sales, all right? Sales can only have one customer, obviously. Because usually only one person buys something, unless you're sharing it, but you don't want to go there, right? And the same thing here, a sale can only have one store. So this is pretty much what this database does. Make sense? I didn't put all the other attributes out there. I just wanted to paint this picture for you so you kind of had an idea of what this database is actually doing. And as you can see in the stores, we have a store and a store location, the customer's first name, last name, zip, and a loyalty card is out there. And then finally, T sales, where actually we have our foreign keys from the store ID and the customer ID from those particular tables with the sales amount and the date, okay, of the sale. Make sense? All right. I've already kind of ran this thing, all right, and we put some data in here. You can see we have stores, Macy's, Dillard's, and so on, some people, some customers, and some sales all the way through it. All right. So down here is our very first aggregate function. So in this case here, we're going to write an aggregate function to show total number of transactions for a particular customer. In this case, we're going to do it for count. So we're going to select count T sales for customer one. We're just going to do this very basic stuff right now. We're not joining any tables. Also, as you notice, what you can do here is you can actually put an alias to this. Pretty much what we're doing in this case is we're creating a brand new column in the results set. Okay, every time you do an aggregate, you're creating a brand new column in the results set. So let's go ahead and run this so you can actually see what this looks like. In this case here, total transactions comes back, and it's 8. I'm actually going to change my results set to text here. Let's rerun this again. Comes back a little bit prettier for us. Total transactions equals 8. All right, pretty easy. If I took this alias off, okay, and went ahead and reran this, basically it will still come back, but it wouldn't have any kind of name to reference. More than likely you want to reference this column in your results set, either in your programming code or in a reporting tool or something. So I always recommend giving it an alias, giving it a name, okay, and just kind of get used to that. Even though you don't have to, I think it's a good practice to do because once again, you're always going to be referencing this stuff more than likely in code. Okay, so total trans 8. So that's count. There you go. So count. So we talked about a function. The name of the function is count. And what we're going to be passing to it, excuse me, is the int sales ID. For count, all you really need to do is just give it one of the columns within the table that you want to count. You don't have to give it more than one column, and it could be any column within the table of a particular result set. All right. So I could have counted sales ID. I could have counted, let's see if we go up to sales here. I could have counted sales ID. I could have counted store ID. I could have counted anything within the actual table of T sales. All right. But again, you only count one of them, and it always works. All right. If you wanted to, I believe, let me make sure of this here. I'm going to go out on a limb here. You could also do something like count asterisk, which would have counted every row. And if I'm correct, yay, I'm correct. It is 8 also. So you can do an asterisk also representing every column within the row, whatever you want to do. Make sense? Good. Okay. Let's get back to our piece here then. I'm gonna have to start all over every time I do this. That's not gonna be good. But anyway, let's go back. Our next one is sum. Sorry about that. The sum function is used to find the sum of a field in various records. So in this case here, for the most part, what it's doing is it's going to total, okay, add up every, what do you want to say, row, a column in every row of our result sets. I use sum quite a bit. As a matter of fact, if I sit back and I kind of look at all 5 of these, I probably use sum the most, probably count second, average here and there, and min and max here and there. But I use sum a lot, so get used to this one. This to me is the most powerful one that can really do a lot of good things where it basically take everything and add them all up. Okay. Once again, I apologize. I'm going to go back out here, and I'll quit apologizing after that one. And then we'll go down here and we'll look at sum. So in this case here, we're going to sum the sales amount as total sales. All right. So once again, we go look at our table. We had the sales amount there, which is reflected by the actual amount within our data. All right. And I'm going to add that up. So what I'm basically doing is I'm running an aggregate to show sales for a particular customer. So customer one, so in this case, customer one was John Smith. And you can see right there, customer, that he is referenced quite a few times in those 8 records that we actually counted for him. And now what we're going to do very easily is go ahead and run this. It's going to come back as total sales. And as you can see, total sales equals $831.91. That's pretty cool. Now, if you're also asking the question right now, well, what if I want to get total sales for all customers? That's a good question if you're asking that. And if that's the case, hold on for a few more minutes. We'll get there. All right. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back here. And then I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's see. We're going to get the average. I want to make sure it's big enough so you can see it. Average. The average function returns the average value of a numeric column. Well, now that we summed it all up, what we can do is also go get the average cell. Okay, I don't use average very often, but it comes in handy every once in a while. And so it's a very powerful function. It'll basically going to count all the records, right? And then it's going to sum them all up and divide that accordingly. But average does the whole thing for you, so you don't have to break it apart in that case. All right. So hopefully we sit back, we come out here, get rid of that one, and we come down to average. So in this case here, we want to write aggregate to show the average sale for a particular customer. And we just use average. And there you go, $103.98. So that's basically those 8 records that we found for customer one that totaled about 800 and some odd dollars, I believe. The average was $103 per sale. Make sense? Okay, again, hopefully you can start seeing some of the opportunities that exist here. And again, we haven't done much else with it, but we can do a lot more, and we will get there as we get finished with these videos, or as we go through these videos, I should say. All right, let's go through the next one. Start this back up again. Should be an easier way, right? It probably is. The min function. The min function returns the smallest value of a selected column. So in this case, if we sit back and go back out and look at what we have, I'm going to do this. So for customer one, if I want to know the minimum value or the minimum sale of his result set, that's what minimum will do for us. Okay, so we'll come down here and look at minimum. And so this is the minimum sale of this particular one. Execute. There we go. So the minimum sale was $19.98 based upon my result set. If I go back and look at my data for customer one, there it is right there. Okay. Now you could probably could have looked at it, right, and found that out yourself. But think about a database with 1 million records in it. That's a pretty powerful thing. So if any time you need to get the minimum value back, and I'm going to tell you, there's quite a few times that's come across that I needed to do something like that. And so minimum is a very powerful little tool to bring back to minimum one. And also, obviously, the maximum is the next one. Okay, I'm not going to bore you by turning that back on again, but the maximum function does the exact same thing. Okay, not the exact same thing, but basically the same thing in regards to bringing back the maximum in this case. So we can kind of look at that one, and here we go. And then $211 is the maximum. All right. So with all of that, I wasn't too hard, hopefully. I hope it's not too hard anyway. Kind of look at these one more time. There's some great websites out there on these. I gave you those in the resources for this particular week. You can take a look at them, W3 Schools and other websites I found that basically describes these pretty well and gives you a good example. Hopefully, I also gave you the code that we just reviewed here, that you can use that as your example as you kind of get into your assignments to try to understand how to do these things. Now, So far, not too bad, I hope. Okay, but there are a few more things we need to learn to make these functions actually more powerful, and that's going to be the group by clause, and that's going to be the having clause. I got videos for each. They won't take too long, so I'll see you there.